all roads lead to franchising, and you think about it, but, we do call it the franchise family, right? The Fran fam, because, I always think of, almost like franchising as an entity, as like the sun, right? And planets, and, everybody kind of makes up the universe, within that, or the galaxy within that dynamic. So it's all related, right? None of us are an island, right? We're all that's why it's called the family, because we really are. And it can be everything from, look at franchise attorneys. Where would anybody be without franchise attorneys? But most people don't even realize that there's attorneys that specialize in franchise.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
Welcome back to the Franchise Hot Seat. I'm John Hayes. My guest today, Alesia Visconti. She owns Fran Serve, but she also has this terrific new book that we will do a better job of showing you in the actual production, The Pink Tsunami, Women's Rise in Franchising. Alesia, welcome to my podcast.
Well, thank you, John, and I appreciate you having me. And as you can see, I'm dressed in my pink jacket.
Yes, well, that's terrific. So I want to begin where I often begin with people in these interviews. Unless you're a Titus or you're a Dwyer or you're a Rosenberg or you're another Titan family in franchising, you don't grow up even knowing how to spell franchising, let alone you will have a career in franchising. People like me, for example, I was 29 until I really heard the word and learned how to spell the word. And shortly after that, my career was unexpectedly, dramatically changed. And that happens to so many people who I bring onto this program. Nobody raises a child and says, someday, honey, mommy hopes you'll be a franchisee or a franchisor or anything related to franchising. Sadly, people across the world, particularly in America where they should know better, know very little about franchising. In spite of the efforts of the International Franchise Association and about 4,000 different franchise brands in America, no one knows this. They know McDonald's, they know about Chick-fil-A. They rarely ever know about great service brands. They rarely ever know about the new emerging low-cost brands in some cases. And they think, well, I don't have $1 million, so there's no sense thinking about franchising. Now, by way of that introduction, I want to go back to, when did you discover it? When did you say, hey, there's this thing franchising, I need to get in on that?
Well, it was about 11 years ago, but can I say I was 29 too? No,
yeah.
Actually, what happened is, it's to a T, John, it's what you're saying. I had owned businesses, I had been president, I had been a CEO, nothing to do with franchising in my career. Never thought about franchising, never have it came up ever, even as an entity. But what happened was about 11 years now, I was the president, CEO of a company that was helping executives climb the corporate ladder. So I had that position for probably, 10 years or so. And for a long time, corporate America and I were very good friends. I had a great team of about 250 people or so. We would teach executives how to move up. We would do everything from interview training and salary negotiation and placement and everything involved. And it was a very symbiotic relationship and I enjoyed it tremendously. So although I had that entrepreneurial spirit, I did help corporate people in corporate America. And then really I would say, around, as I just said, 10, 11, 12 years ago, I just started to get very disillusioned, very disgusted with how corporate America had changed, really turned its back on the people that had helped build it. In my opinion, I saw, age discrimination just coming out tremendously. Women going back from, maternity leave, or even veterans coming back from tour of duty they were all invisible. And it wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy going to work. I didn't enjoy getting up in the morning. And I just started to think about what else could we do for these individuals. They had been clients of ours for a long time. We'd helped them with their careers. And so, I did what a lot of people do and never actually admit to. I went to Google. I started putting words into Google. I didn't know where to go. Interestingly enough, my very early career was as a life and career coach, but here I couldn't treat me as a candidate. So I went to Google and I have no idea, honestly, at this point, what I started putting in: careers and helping and business and I don't know. But eventually, franchise consulting came up. And John, I was like, what the heck heck is that? Like, I had never mind heard about franchising. What the heck's a franchise consultant? And that really opened the door. I started doing some research. I joined Fran Serve as one of their affiliates, as a franchise consultant. And man, I took to that like a fish in water. That was like, that made me feel good again. I was taking a lot of people out of corporate America and making them feel good about their future and about their lives and helping them become franchise owners. And I loved it. I did very well. It was great. And serendipity, things happen for a reason, right? We all know that greater forces are at work here. But our founder, Tim, he was older. He decided he was going to retire. So after about 2 years, I got approached to buy his business. And that's what he said. How would you like to buy my baby? And I think it took me literally like 2 seconds to think about it. And then that deal wrapped up in a month. It was just done, meant to be, just happened. And that's a crazy little story, but that's how it goes sometimes, right?
Yeah, it was a perfect fit for Tim and for you. And I'm always amazed because when I hear these stories, and in the case of my own story, there's a higher force at work. And
100%.
I've always said from day one, having grown up in Ohio in a Catholic family, 12 years of Catholic school, I know that God has a plan for my life. And it's not always been a great plan from time to time because there have been some very sad points in my life, but you've got to look for those doors to open. Yours was Google in this case, then franchise consulting. And just imagine you took the leap because you didn't just join Fran Serve. I'm assuming you bought in for yourself as a franchise consultant. They didn't hire you.
Correct. Yeah, I will tell you, when I became a consultant, it was great, right? Because you do pay a fee, right? Just like it's, your training and education, and you're not an employee, right? You're an independent business owner as a franchise consultant under Fran Serve. So I made that investment. But I will say that when I was, in the process, I, told my husband I was going to now purchase Fran Serve. My husband comes from corporate America, and at first he was like, "What are you doing? Like you've been there less than 2 years. Like how are you going to do this?" And I just said, I've owned businesses. This is another one. I mean, but it was funny in the sense that what you say, right? God gives you opportunities, but you've got to walk through the door.
Yeah, definitely.
Got to walk through the door.
Yeah, and sometimes I have found the door smacks you in the face or in the back end, but you just keep going. You go through another door. I tell students that all the time. So I want to go back to your commentary about corporate America, which I despise, not for any particular reason, never did anything horrible to me, but I was in corporate America enough times or served corporate America as they were a client that I knew that wasn't for me. I wasn't going to get along there, and I needed to be in my own business. Young people today who I graduate from the Titus Center with the concentration in franchising, and they get a degree in whatever they want. Usually it's a business degree. International business should be a favorite, particularly today. Marketing is probably more of a favorite. And when they look at going for a corporate career, first of all, they have no idea what they're up against. And secondly, when they get in there, sometimes the disappointment is so severe. The way they're treated, the opportunities to advance. Now, it's not true in all corporate America. Certainly, there are great opportunities. But all in all, have you seen the decline of corporate America? And what's that doing to young people today?
It's ironic that you say that. I was just having this conversation. I do think there's two factors that is changing the mindset of younger generations, and in my opinion, to the better. I don't know that corporate America would say that, but I do. And I think one is the emphasis of our society as a whole, young and old, to move away from corporate America. And I think we saw that a great deal during the pandemic. Corporate America was really struggling on how to function and really taken back. And I think it was a game changer and a big eye opener for society to stop and think about, what do I do every day? Do I like it? Am I enjoying the travel, or do I like being home and having my schedule and calling the shots? And while you never want to profit from something as horrific as the pandemic, it did move society into a different direction. So now what always was valued, right? You went to school and you got a good job and you stayed there forever and you retired and then you died, was being questioned and challenged. And I don't know that it would have been as strongly as it was if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So there is always a silver lining in all of it. And I think the second thing is, one of the things I love being around Titus and why we bring, interns to our convention and why, they're curious, right? Younger generations are curious. And before that, the curiosity was kind of shot down a little bit, was directed. It was, get the good job and, have the 2.3 children, right? Where now it's like, well, how about you start thinking? You use your brain. You don't follow the norm. You don't become a sheep. If you want to go down corporate America path, that's fine, but you decide that now. It's not just automatic like getting up and breathing. It's you're making that decision. And I think that emphasis is what's giving us really such sharp minds in younger generations.
So the last Gallup poll that I saw said 2/3 of corporate America hate their jobs. They wouldn't take the same job all over again. And yet parents don't really know any better in many cases and want their kids to go to college to get a degree and join corporate America. I'm thinking of one of my very successful young ladies who graduated 4 years ago, works at United Franchise Group, recently bought her own home here in a very hot, and I mean figuratively as well as literally, South Florida market. Never thought she would be able to afford to buy a home in a market like this, but she can due to the position that she has with a franchise company. But when she told her family, I'm going to study franchising, their first comment was, no, you don't go to college to work at McDonald's, which just shows you how far off our adult generation is in what franchising is all about, how little people know about franchising. And fortunately, she stuck to it, this young lady, and did very well in franchising, did an internship at United Franchise Group, has been there ever since, spent 6 months in Australia because United Franchise Group sent her there to their corporate office in Australia, and she worked the max of time that she could on a visa till she returned. So we create these kinds of opportunities in franchising, and yet sometimes we're fighting parents who don't want their kids to do that, thinking they're going to flip burgers for the rest of their life.
And I almost can't fault them, because what did you say? You got into franchising when you were 29. I bet you were thinking the same thing when you were 25, 26, and 27. Yeah. I know before I did the all powerful Google, that's pretty much what I thought, right? Yeah. So most people do not understand franchising. They do think it is big business. Right? They think they do not realize it's small business and, each is individually owned. They don't think any of that. And when you think of a franchise owner, it's one of the things that we have to overcome as a franchise consultant. When we're showing someone who's going to be a business owner, a franchise owner, a new franchisee, and we show them especially like a service, well, I don't want to be cleaning floors. I don't want to be painting houses. No, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to be the CEO. You're going to run your business and hire people who do that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. It's 2025 and we still don't really have an understanding as a society of what franchising means. We think that it is, I'm going to say as a whole, somewhat less than corporate America. We still think corporate America outranks franchising in terms of careers, prestige, income, equality, all those kind of things. And yet, not universally, but many, many times it's the opposite. Right? Franchising is a great equalizer. Pay scale. I mean, it's one of the reasons I love seeing women get involved in it, right? Pay scale, earnings, much more equal than in corporate America, where it's still so displaced. Yeah. So it's very interesting, right? When 2025 and, technology and ChatGPT and the world the size of a dime, and we still don't understand franchising. We don't understand the business model.
Yeah.
Still.
And going back final point on corporate America and Gen Z, who is in college now, and that's who I spend the majority of my time with. Their goals and their ideas about what to do after college, frequently they don't know. They come right up to graduation and they're not sure. Now, if they have a concentration in franchising, they're at least going to get opportunities, because I've never had a student yet, and we've graduated more than 100 now, never had a student who didn't have franchise opportunities for work if they wanted them. And some who've gone on to do wonderful things, including buying franchises and creating their own franchise supplier businesses. But one of the things that Gen Zs will say is, I don't want a job just to have a job and get a paycheck. I want a career. I want to do something that's meaningful to my community, to my church or synagogue, or to my state. I have students who want to run for elective offices. They want to do something to help change the world. That's what's different about the Gen Zs. Changing the world from corporate America, what's the chance of that happening?
I think what's true, right, and you see it as time goes on, and the pendulum changes here and there. And when I was growing up, just not that long ago when I was in college, joke, but, the emphasis was, he who dies with the most toys wins, right? It was very myopic. It was very about profits and dollars and, all the materialistic things that you could own. That was how you spelled success. Yeah. So you look at how things have changed, right? How the world has, let's just say, become wiser, right? And kinder. And yet the vision is to actually do more. Like, think how limited it is just to have toys, right? How does that change anything? It certainly doesn't make people feel good when they wake up long term, right? That's the empty hole that everybody has, unless they, look for a higher power or something else. But when you're talking about young generations, I certainly understood that when, as I said, one of my very first careers outside of modeling when I was very young, but was as a life and career coach. And I've always had to be involved with something that left people better off than when I found them, whether it was helping them figure out their careers, climbing a corporate ladder. I worked with dating services. I worked with pets, things that would make people feel good, have that warm fuzzy inside. And there's certainly definitely areas in corporate America that you can do that. But as a whole, it's not how success is spelled or measured. No. And I think that's the difference. I think after seeing that and seeing where we are, where the world is after, decades of that mentality, younger kids are smarter, younger adults are smarter, and they realize what's the definition of doing, of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And expecting a different outcome. So they're changing their direction. And how fantastic is that?
Yeah. And franchise consulting was a perfect opportunity for you, even though you didn't know about it. You might not have discovered it had some dissatisfaction with corporate America not occurred and led you to go to Google to find out what else is out there. And you were like me, and so many others were just meant to be in franchising, where you were put in an opportunity, or you bought your way into an opportunity where you helped other people find better opportunities for themselves that put them in charge, help them get into a business that would build their wealth and give them satisfaction far beyond corporate America will ever do for the vast majority of people in corporate America. This is a no-brainer.
And I agree with you, and it's still difficult for a lot of people, right? For some people, they fear of the unknown is so great that it's like, I'd rather stay in a bad relationship, right? Attitude than divorce or step away or find a new job or whatever it may be. And, my heart breaks for people like that, because I also think that people do not understand, I joke that all roads lead to franchising, because you think about it, I started as a franchise consultant, not as a franchisee, and not, I personally think that I would have not done well as a franchisee. I don't follow directions very well.
Right. I can't see you as a franchisee.
Yeah, I couldn't really work for corporate America per se, because I would have been fired in like 7 seconds. I know that about me. But all roads, I always say that, lead to franchising, because not only do most people not know what franchising is, if they have any inkling, they think, well, you have to be a franchise owner, and I don't want that. Therefore, franchising is not for me. And so I came in, as what's called the supplier, right? We serve, hence the name Fran Serve, right? We serve the franchise community, right? By assisting and helping them grow. So it's just a lot of times when I do speaking or go, that's the first thing. Well, what franchise do you own? I'm like, I don't own a franchise. I'm not a franchisee. I have, 800 brands that are my children, but, I'm not. So there's other opportunities, including, even being an employee of a franchisee or a franchisor. So it's not you have to own a business or franchise. There's no place for you in franchise.
Yeah. And how amazing that around franchising, around the actual business concept itself of owning a franchise and franchisors who own the brand and then award or sell franchises, there's this other amazing community called suppliers who provide lots of help to franchisors and franchisees, including headhunting, for example, but lots of other CRMs that businesses need today that we didn't have 20 years ago. And advertising and marketing and social media. There are a lot of experts out there who are not franchisors or franchisees, but the franchise community cannot succeed without the help of those suppliers. You being, in this case, a Fran Serve being a supplier company.
Well, and I think that's very true, right? So that's why I say all roads lead to franchising. And you think about it, but, we do call it the franchise family, right? The Fran fam, because, I always think of, almost like franchising as an entity, as like the sun, right? And planets and, everybody kind of makes up the universe, within that, or the galaxy within that dynamic. So it's all related, right? None of us are an island, right? We're all that's why it's called the family, because we really are. And it can be everything from, look at franchise attorneys. Where would anybody be without franchise attorneys? But most people don't even realize that there's attorneys that specialize in franchising. Yeah. It's like nobody knows that. So that's one of the things that is kind of one of my missions, if you will, in franchising. And that's kind of my mission, is to help more people, society, others, understand that franchising is more than what they think of. And there's a niche for them. There's a place for them. There's an avenue for them, at least to explore. So
just to give you a little history and how things are changing in franchising. 8 years ago, I taught my first class. It'll be 9 years coming up in the fall that I taught my first class at Palm Beach Atlantic University in franchising. And I had 20 in that class and 3 were females. And in my next class that I taught in franchising, I had 29. One was a female. And then as we went along, I noticed just this past year, and I believe maybe a half year prior to that, I looked out at the 20 to 25 that I normally have in a class. And in one case, there were more women than there were men. And I'm not sure why that happened. Palm Beach Atlantic is a very small Christian university, about 4,000 students. And students don't have to take franchising. It's an elective. Whether the word got out that franchising has opportunities for women, or it just so happened that that particular semester, there were a lot of young ladies who wanted to take a franchise course. Not sure. It's pretty much held true that my classes now are about 50-50, which has been a surprise, has been welcoming, and it ties into you writing the Pink Tsunami and your dedication, which I like so much, to women who want something more than to just get by, to women who want a life and future they absolutely deserve, and especially to women who want to do something fantastic, and to everyone who knows a woman like that. And we all do. That's a great dedication, and you are helping clear the way to bring women into franchising at all levels. And many, many women are out there. I was very fortunate that Don Dwyer was one of my first clients going back into the late 1980s, one of the pioneers in franchising, 6 children. Dina Dwyer Owens, not the oldest, but in the middle, and Dina becomes the president of the Dwyer Group after her father's untimely death. I was very fortunate to be on the company's board. It was a publicly traded company back then until Riverside came along. Private equity did one of the first private equity deals in franchising and took the Dwyer Group back to being a private company with Dina, Don's daughter, at the helm of that company. And then I watched Dina over the next 25 or so years. I knew her when she was a cheerleader in high school, and to see how she developed as a young executive. Now, she's not the only one. There are many more who have come out of the Dwyer Group, many women. Mary Thompson, the relatively new president of B&I. Lots of other women across the country who have discovered franchising. But it wasn't always so. You go to the IFA convention and you look around. Back in those days, there were only 600, 700 people at an IFA convention. It was very much a man's world. And over the years, that has changed. It needs to change more. I think it is changing more. And thanks to you and others like you, and bringing out a book like The Pink Tsunami, that's going to help women discover franchising.
Well, and I appreciate that, John, and it's very true, right? When I got into franchising, the women were the percentage was very small, and that is definitely changing, but not enough. I mean, I still see it with business. And the reason that I wrote this book was there's a lot of very good books in franchising. I mean, you've written some. There's books on how to own a franchise, how to sell a franchise, how to sell, if you're a brand, like sell your whole brand. Lots of good things, how to be a good franchisor, but nothing like this, nothing about the scope of the reach of franchising, and certainly nothing for women. And I thought, why is that? I mean, why is that? Why are we not talking to an underserved community in franchise? Like, why aren't we reaching that out? So when I started this book, which was hilarious, I mean, the day before I started this book, I had no intentions of writing a book. And we talk about it. We talk about being, I woke up that day, knew I was going to write a book, knew the title, knew what it was going to be about, and I told my husband. Just like that. Just like if you get up and you brush your teeth. All just laid out in front of me. And
I bet he just waits to hear what the next declaration is going to be.
It's amazing, right? And that's what happened. And it took a full year, because I have at least 30 people who contribute their stories. Everything from suppliers to franchisees to franchisors. I mean, all of it, men and women, because there are many men who will tell you franchising is better having women's perspective in it. And what really, surprised me on everything is, if you look at society, if you look at our world, it's made up of, men and women and people of color and people but is it reaching franchising? Maybe not as much. So that's why I was like, that's what I think of, right? It should emulate what the world is. It should emulate people. And so let's bring more of what's missing, right? And equal it out. It's not that I think men haven't done a great job in franchising. Heck, yes, they have. Look at it. It's amazing. But what could we do if we brought in a different slant, a different thing?
Yeah.
And that's why I wrote the book.
And your book does a very good job of giving this overview, not just how do you buy a franchise. I think that is great. Given that you've done an overview, are there certain parts of franchising that you would say women really ought to go for this in franchising?
That's my career coach hat coming on now.
Yeah.
That's you find a lot of women in things like supplier. I think it's easier for women to come into that door, because if you've done things like marketing or sales, or if you've done things like real estate, like all of those kind of things, right, are needed in the franchise space. A lot of times, if you're training and teaching, you can get into that in franchising. Like there's a lot of crossover. You have to think about what your skill sets are, what you like doing, right? Just like any career, when you're doing I like to do the T-square, what I like, what I don't like, what I want more of, what I want less of, right? And start exploring things. And because not what's right for me is not, right for someone else, or just because their cousin Susie said this was the great opportunity, that doesn't mean it's right for them. You have to balance things out, right? Everything from travel to everything, what you like doing, family, what comes first, where's your priorities. But I will tell you something that's very, very interesting that I find, Catherine Munson, I mean, my mentor, my inspiration, her and Mary are, huge for me. Catherine wrote my foreword. So she and I think alike. It's the concept of how do you get started, right? You can't get wet from the word water. That's one of my favorite sayings, right? I don't know when I started saying that. I think when I came out of the womb. You can't get wet from the word water. You got to step in the pool. So that's what I encourage women to do. I give them a whole plethora of ways to look at different ways, and then take a step. Because the community, men, women, all of us, old, young, we are that family. We are that franchise family. So the minute you take that step in, like there's a whole lot of us that will embrace and hug. And I think that's the key. That's what I want someone to just maybe think about exploring franchise. You may still want to do corporate. You may still want to go down that path, but just explore over here. Just take a look over here.
Then you've got to take it to the next level, which you've already mentioned. If someone had said to you, Alesia, you should become a franchisee, it would have been the worst mistake, because you're not going to follow someone else's plan for success. And that is not a weakness. Whether there's some idiot on social media, and this is an idiot, or at least in my kingdom it is, where he said, I would never become a franchisee. Why would I follow someone else's game plan to success? And when I think of the Catherine Munsons and the Don Dwyers and the Ray Tituses and the people who had a game plan for success, Bill Rosenberg with Dunkin' Donuts, Ray Kroc with McDonald's, why wouldn't I want to follow those game plans to success? Well, the reason I wouldn't is because, like you, I can't. I'm not a good employee. I'm not a good franchisee. Been a franchisee, but only with a partner who could follow the plan. I didn't follow the plan. And I've been a franchisor and was much better at that. But if you can't follow the plan or you have an aversion to it, then you definitely don't want to be a franchisee in franchising. You might want to be a franchisor, or you might want to own your own supplier business. There are so many opportunities. Or a Joyce Mazzaro, who's one of the top forever that I've known her from Dallas. She was a client of mine years ago, one of the top franchise attorneys in the world. So there are lots of opportunities that women just don't know about. Even that, you mean I could become a lawyer and work in franchising? Yes, you can. There are lots of things that you can master. Marketing, for example, and use that to rise and build your own business or build a franchisee's business who you're working at their right arm. There are all these opportunities that people just don't know about. They got to drill down a little bit to make sure it's right for them.
Exactly. And that's really the whole thing. Because what you said, John, is very true. If I thought the only path into franchising was for me to be a franchise owner, I would have looked at that and walked away, and that would have been the end of it. That door would have been shut forever. So that's why I encourage people. I mean, that is my, my coaching hat, right? Is to think about what you want to do and how you want to quote Tony Robbins, to design your life, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to, being honest with yourself. But I think it's hard to explore if you don't even know what's out there. You don't even know, and that's why I wrote the book. At least I want if I can change, someone's life just because, like franchising did for me, in whatever capacity it happens, well, then that's a success for me.
Yes.
I could do that for someone.
I think about the many young women who I've had come out of my program. Delaney Hetzer, who loves her new position at Three Natives, and they love her, and others who have moved into something that they had no idea when they got into college, because they were going to study management, or they were going to study data something or another. I don't even know what that is. Or they were going to study political science or communications or English or history, God forbid. What are you going to do with that? Well, no matter what you major in, if you put franchising with it, you will have amazing opportunities open before you. And they've discovered that. And I want to see that continue, particularly for young women who come through my program and women across the country. And then you do a fantastic convention every year at Disney World, and that helps them as well, much like franchisors will do for their franchisees. Bring everybody together, bring in speakers. I've been very fortunate to have an intern there for the last several years, and to be there and meet your Fran fam, and the expo that you do of franchisors who come to exhibit, to introduce their concepts. It makes so much sense for people who want to represent franchise brands and help lead people to invest in a particular brand.
Well, yeah, because, I tell you, I always say that your vibe attracts your tribe, right? So the cool thing about franchising is no matter what, you're a supplier, you're a franchisee, you're a franchisor, there is the attitude of the rising ships, the rising tide and the ships that rise with it, right? So, normally in corporate America, you're not helping someone else because you want to do better than them. You want to be ranked higher. You want to beat them. You want to, in franchising, there's success as a whole, as an entity, right? The whole is greater than the part, right? And so you see that our convention, we're a little crazy. We have it at Disney World, so that kind of says everything, right? About our culture. I mean, all in Mickey Mouse ears. I bring Mickey Mouse up on the stage. John, you've been there. You see it, right?
I've been there. I've had my photo several times with Mickey Mouse.
We take business very seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. I really do think if you're not having fun, it's very difficult to learn.
Why do it? Yeah.
Right. So it's part carnival, it's part,
Yeah.
business. I mean, it's very, and I think what happens with that is it makes it a very conducive mindset to hear new ideas also, right?
Yeah.
Because Disney is creative and imaginative, and it's amazing what they do. I mean, the magic truly lives there. And when you go to that, you get caught up in it. I mean,
Yeah, you do.
you're open, you want to hear, you want new ideas. So it's very different than like corporate, when you go to a corporate meeting where the tone is set and it's almost
Right.
closed down. It's almost like
Right.
forced. You must listen to it like this.
Right. Yeah.
Now, this is almost the opposite when it comes to
Yeah.
that.
Definitely is. So another point that I want to touch on, you have 800 brands that a franchise consultant can represent. Now, as amazing as that is, there are 4,000 brands, give or take a couple hundred, I guess, in North America, and not all of them are selling franchises every day, because some of them are sold out.
Correct.
Some of them are going to be sold out in wherever you live. If it's Ohio, you can't buy one there. Maybe they're not there yet. The brand just hasn't arrived in Ohio yet. So it's not like everybody every day has 4,000 plus brands available to them. But even 800 of them, how would you know? Thankfully, you can break them down by industries and into categories. And there are people who are going to say, and in my 40 years of teaching at the International Franchise Expo and the regional expos that IFA has sponsored until recently around the country, this has changed dramatically. It used to be, if I asked 100 people in my audience for aid is buying a franchise, if you buy a franchise today, how many of you know it will be in the food industry? 70% of the hands would go up. Today, when I ask that same question, and it's been this way for 10 years, when I ask the same question, 70% of the hands won't go up. They do not want to buy food. So whether that's right or wrong, good or bad, doesn't matter. My point is, people have realized there's more to franchising than food. And a lot of it costs less, and a lot of it doesn't require you to be open 7 days a week. So people are looking at these other service and business to business opportunities that are not food related. So you can break down the 800 into respective categories. Where I said, well, I don't like the cleaning business. I don't want to be involved in that. Or the painting business. I don't want to be involved in that. There are still 622 more that you could look at. How do people get a grip on that? How do consultants help them get a grip on that early in the process?
Yeah, one of the things that I joke when I'm talking to somebody looking at becoming, like, let's say, a franchise consultant with us, because we have 800 consultants as well. I mean, we have a big footprint in brokerage. But I joke and I say the best thing about Fran Serve is we have over 800 brands, and the worst thing about Fran Serve is, we have over 800 brands, right?
Yeah.
Because it's overwhelming. But and you got to remember, that's what I was. I was a consultant, so I walked the walk. That's the only reference I know. I was never a franchisee. I was never a franchisor. So I get it, right, when you come in. But I'm very blessed. I have, a team that's been with me pretty much since I bought the company. We've expanded. We've hired, we brought in more executive, but my core team has been with me from the beginning. So I've been very blessed. And they're wonderful at developing technology. We have, not me, but they are. I know what I want it to do, and then the magic happens, as they say, right? And so we have a lot of proprietary technology that helps, especially at the beginning, teach a new franchise consultant matching software. Put in XYZ. What are they looking for? Here are things that get spit out. And then, of course, the candidate is always the one that's going to make the decisions. From, if we narrow it down to 5-6 brands, right? They're going to start exploring that. So it's not like we pick the brand. We give them an opportunity to investigate some of the brands that we would recommend, almost like a matchmaker. But it's funny, people will say to me, what's changed in franchising? Why do you have so many brands? I mean, when I took over Fran Serve, I think there was 250 brands. Now we have over 800. So people have said that to me. What on earth, are you doing? Like, why do you attract these brands? And I think part of it is because I was a career coach. I bring that to Fran Serve. Everything that I learned, it was about bringing matches, people, recruiting, all of that. But I think also what really happens is franchising has changed. Just what you said, John. Footprints got smaller, got more affordable. You don't need to have 73 people working for you. You might only need 17. You might only need 7. You might only need 3. Like, it depends on the footprint, the cost. You didn't need $1 million in your back pocket. Now most people, if you have good credit, they can find a franchise they can afford. So I think a lot of that, and I think that will continue. I always feel that I know franchising has been around for more than 30 years, but I still think we're in our teenage year in how we're presenting to bring businesses and people together. Still a lot to learn, but so I think that's it. And people do tease me all the time, like, why do you need, I'll just make it up, like, 15 pet brands or 25 senior care? And the reason why I do that is because just what you said, territories sell out.
Yeah.
When I was a consultant, the last thing I wanted to do was tell my candidate, no, you can't own this franchise in this territory. It's gone. But what if I said, hey, I have this one that's similar and they have open territories. Do you want to look at that? Then I can say, yeah. So this is why I'm always open, right, to bringing on franchises. And you have to balance it, right? Bringing on consultants, right? We turn people down just like we turn brands down that don't fit us. It's an interesting balance. Bigger is not always better, but it's the way that it is our second core value. First core value, integrity is everything. Second one is grow or die. It's just business. If you don't grow, you're dying.
Yeah, and growing is what I want to talk about next. You mentioned that Fran Serve is the world's largest franchise consulting brokerage firm. So I am now teaching online in South Korea in the fall, franchising, of course. And this past spring, I had 27 students in Croatia at Zagreb School of Economics and Management. I will be doing that again, and they will be including their sister school, the University of Luxembourg. And when we talk about franchise brokerage in those countries, and I've spoken about franchising all over the Middle East because I lived there for 7 years, and throughout Europe and the Asian world, no one knows anything about that for the most part. The brokerage idea, the brokerage career hasn't landed in Zagreb, Croatia. Maybe kind of there, but not in Luxembourg, not in Budapest. What are your plans? Is this where you go? Is this where you grow in the future?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of countries around the world don't understand franchise consulting. A lot of attorneys actually serve in more of that capacity, and they don't necessarily want to be doing that. Right before the pandemic, my last company, I grew to 11 countries. So I love going international. I think that there's a lot of opportunity. We have consultants now all around the world because we don't have territories. There was no territories, right? We're all virtual. So I find it exciting. Just like anything else, even though we're not a franchise, understanding the laws that impact countries on how to acquire a franchise, how to invest, what the difficulty. I've attended at your summit sessions on expanding internationally, not as a franchisor, but knowledge in that sector. So I do think that I've seen it. I do think that as the world gets smaller and international becomes, I probably would have jumped on it a lot sooner. And then this tiny little thing called the pandemic came up, and like that shut everything down. But my last company, I grew to 11 countries all throughout Europe and Australia. And so I love international.
Well, I'll be looking forward to talking to you about those opportunities.
Always. I follow you on social media. I'm always like, go John.
No, great. Thank you. So what about, I'd like to end with this one. You are a great supporter of the Titus Center for Franchising, which I appreciate personally. And my students appreciate because you give them opportunities. They love listening to you. They love learning from you. You participate in our meetings. I want to know why. What do you get out of supporting the Titus Center for Franchising?
That's a sweet question, John. It really is. And I think it goes back to our core value and, ways that you and I think a lot about why we're on this planet, right? Our first core value for the company was the core values are mine, and I brought them to Fran Serve, and that's integrity is everything. So, what are you doing to make things better? What are you doing to help someone find their path? If it's just about me, that's kind of boring. I know me. I'm fine. What can I challenge myself? What can I do for someone else? One of the reasons I love the Titus Center and what you do is it's the young adult. It's the person who might be a little lost. Some of your people are very sharp. They know exactly where they're going. But a lot of them that age, right? Let's face it, right? The world is uncertain. We don't know.
Right.
What are they going to do? Where are they going to go? There's nothing better for me when I touch somebody's life in some way, and I'm never going to see them again, or whatever's going to happen, and it's like you made a difference to me for that 2 minutes. It's why I will always compliment a waitress that has a beautiful pair of shoes on or lovely hair. I'm never going to see them again, but isn't that why we're on this planet? I mean, if it's not to help each other and to uplift each other and to make it better, why am I getting out of bed? What is it for me? It's not anything else. So I think that's why it's everybody says to me, everything you touch is golden, and you always know where you're going, and you're driven, and well, I come from an alcoholic, horrible family. I could have been lost, completely lost. Could have gone down really a bad path, and thank God, literally, that didn't happen to me. So I'm amazed at where my life is, and I want to touch other people and give that back. So Titus is a wonderful, wonderful tool. I get on your campus, man, I'm like buzzing. You can feel it. You can feel the energy there, and your students are so polite and so eager to learn. It's a wonderful environment. I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank
what you
you.
do.
We really appreciate it. Students appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you soon. I'm going to see
back
you
at you.
very soon.
I think you'll be with me and Mickey soon.
Yeah, very soon. That'll be great. Okay, Alesia, thank you so much.
Thank you, John, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.